This episode of Homemade was previously recorded in front of a live stream audience who asked questions and cook along during the show. If you love cooking and want to join us in the kitchen, visit homemadecooking.com to register for free live classes. Now, let's get cooking. Welcome to Homemade. I'm Joel Gamoran. I'm going to be the head chef today. I'm also the head chef of Homemade and also the founder. I have to say, there's a lot of dishes I cook in this kitchen. You guys, I am a self-proclaimed risotto whisperer. Okay? God's laughing. I'm sorry. I know when it comes to risotto, when you watch it on like those competition cooking shows, it's always the dish that makes people go home. All the judges are like, ew, this is disgusting, and throws it away. Pack up your knives and leave. Everyone thinks risotto is so hard. It is the easiest thing in the world. You just got to kind of nail that texture piece, and we're going to get to it. Well, guys, let's get started. So risotto, for those of you guys who don't know, it comes from Italy. It's kind of like a pasta course. So like you would eat this like pasta or like a side dish to maybe, you know, a protein, a salad, something like that. Honestly, but like a pasta, it could be the whole meal. So it could be a nice like starchy side. It can be the main event, whatever you want to do. Why I love risotto is I think it's the most versatile dish maybe in cooking. It's one of. It can take on any flavor. In the winter, I love making carrot risotto. In the summer, it's all about tomato risotto. In the fall, I can do a sweet risotto with pears. I mean, it's beyond versatile. But the trick with risotto is when I get it at a restaurant and it's really thick, so thick that like it can stand up on its own, that's no bueno. That's where I would send a chef home if they gave me risotto that's that thick. So it's more about the texture, how to stop the rice right when it's al dente, so you have a little bit of that bite. And we're going to talk about all of that starting right now. So first step to risotto is we have some really good veggie stock. So this is literally just veggie scraps. You can totally buy the stock yourself. Just get unsalted if you're going to buy store-bought stock, but we've got some stock here, and I just brought it to the boil, turned it off, put a lid over the top of it, and I'm putting this to the side. All right? We want to have warm stock. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but the stock is what's going to feed this rice and just make it juicy and delicious. The next thing you really need is just a heavy set, kind of like saucepan. I'm using this Le Creuset on a medium heat. All right, so I'm heating this up to like a 6. Cool, and I'm gonna just drop a little bit of butter in there, like a couple tablespoons, and just let that start to melt. Cool, really, really, really easy. Then I've got 2 different aromatics. If all you have is one of these, that's totally cool. If you don't have either one of these and all you have is an onion, that's great too. But we're using shallots and garlic. And almost all risotto starts the same way. You want to cut this as fine as you possibly can because we kind of want it to melt into the rice. All right, I've got 3 cloves of garlic peeled. I'm just going to smash these up and add it to my pile of shallots. So I turn down the heat a little bit, but you really want to keep these from browning. You kind of want to sweat them. We'll talk about that. But I'm going to chop these up nice and fine. These are looking great. And in we go. All right, so check this out, guys. Look at my mixture. See how soft this got? But see how little brown it got. Mikhailo, can you go to a top down? There you go, bud. See how soft it's getting? But it's not really brown. It's just like lightly opaque. So this next step is huge. I'm going to get my rice and I'm going to add it in, all right? This is called toasting the rice. So I'm going to toast it in the actual shallots and the garlic. Now, when it comes to risotto, everyone freaks out about the rice. What type of rice do you use? Does anyone want to throw in the chat? What type of rice is commonly used in risotto? Throw it in the chat. Curious. What are people saying, Kat?
Arborio.
Arborio rice is the most popular rice. You can find it at any grocery store now. It's so popular. Arborio, A-R-Borio, B-O-R-I-O. Why Arborio? It's so starchy, which means that it's got a ton of thickening agent on it. These little, it's like a short grain rice that are really plump. And if you've ever cooked rice in like a rice cooker and it sticks together, that's the starch. This one sticks together the most. And it's really good for risotto because it makes for a very creamy risotto. What we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of mushrooms to this. Now this is kind of crazy, but we're going to add this at the very end. So I'm going to let that rice toast for another little minute. I'm going to start slicing these mushrooms. We kind of want the mushrooms to be so small that they kind of melt into the rice. All right, so I'm going to add a little bit of stock to this rice, just enough to kind of coat. You guys can see little bubbles happening, but not a crazy, it's not boiling. It's almost like simmering. Now, this is the only way I can explain this, so just go with me here. For 1 cup of rice in risotto, it's about 4 cups of stock, okay? So 1 cup to 4 cups. You might need a little bit more, you might need a little bit less. Depends on the weather, all right? What you have to think about is that the rice is like a loading bar on your computer, okay? Every single time I add a little stock, it loads. All right, it's just loading and getting more and more and more downloaded or cooked. So this rice, I just added a little bit of stock, is probably 10%. Our goal is we want to stop at 90% when the rice is 90% cooked, because we want a little bit of chew, a little bit of that al dente. So I'm going to let this cook. We're not going to cover it. You don't need to stand here and mix it all the time. It's good to give it a mix maybe every couple of minutes, just so it doesn't stick to the bottom. But once it starts to kind of dry up and all the stock starts to go away and get absorbed into the rice, it's time to feed it some more stock. So I'm going to do it again. All right, guys, so every once in a while I'm stirring this rice. I'm doing my thing. This is actually a really good time to add your mushrooms. All right, I'm going to go with a good handful of these. And again, this is more for flavor than anything else. So I'm going to add those in. They're going to help kind of absorb a little bit of that stock. Beautiful. All right. So the only thing you got to kind of do is just babysit this. And every once in a while, give it a stir. And just look. If it gets dry, add a little bit more stock. Pretty easy. So we're going to make pesto from scratch. In the recipe, it calls for like, I don't know, 6 ounces, about 3/4 of a cup. Any really leaf will work for pesto, right? Any herb. Typically it's basil, but I've had kale pestos, parsley pesto, and today we're using parsley and mint. It's just what we have. It's what looked good at the grocery store. So I'm going to start to kind of rip up the parsley and mint into smaller pieces. And I tend to always make my pesto with a mortar and pestle. So you start with a couple of cloves of garlic, right in a pestle mortar. I add a big pinch of salt, and I just break those up. Look at that. Already paste. I love it. By the way, I'm just checking my risotto. It's getting a little dry. Looks like it needs a little bit more stock. So I'm just going to add in enough to cover. Now, typically, you're going to use pine nuts. They're buttery, but pine nuts are so hard to find in the States, and they are ridiculously expensive. And so I love cashews. Cashews are creamy, they're buttery, easy to find. So I'm going to go handful of cashews and bust that up. Beautiful. Look at that. Doesn't really take that long to get to like cashew butter status. Then you just start adding in like handfuls of your herbs. Bust them down. Really take your time. Grab another handful. In we go. And bust those up too. So at this point, what you're left with is just like this. This beautiful, herby, nutty paste. So then I'm gonna grab a lemon, all right? So I love putting just like a little touch of lemon, like the smallest little bit. It just brightens it. And then I just grab olive oil. I don't measure it. I just do enough till it kind of loosens like a sauce. It comes together so quickly. Make sure all the little bits are in there. At this point, I'm doing less of a hitting motion, more of like a rubbing motion. And then Parmesan is just kind of at the end. So I'm going to go with a little bit of Parm, just grated Parmesan. Just like that. Just kind of add that in. Homemade, vibrant, minty, parsley pesto. How we doing in the chat, ladies and gents?
We're doing great. We actually had, where is it? We had someone suggest, from Julian, if you want to make pesto, you can also use the garlic scapes, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Oh, yeah. In spring, right now, you can get those garlic scapes, which are just really young garlic before they turn into the bulbs. Man, those are so good. Oh, great call. All right. Also ramps, which is like wild garlic. Amazing. All right, guys, I'm going to add one more ladle of stock here. And this is kind of the texture. I'm going to wait maybe about a minute for it to kind of soak it in. But you want the texture. I know this is a weird comparison for what we're cooking, but what you're looking for is like applesauce texture. I know that is really strange, but you want that kind of flowy texture. It's not runny. It's still thick and creamy, but it has a little bit of movement to it. So I know I didn't overcook it. I'm just about where I want to kind of pull this off. And I think I'm going to pull it off right now. So I'm going to turn off the heat. A couple of things we add at the end. Always you add a little bit of butter, a couple tablespoons. Again, I'm off the heat, so the butter doesn't break and it just kind of incorporates in. Then I've got some cheese, and by some cheese, I mean, I got a lot of cheese. I've got like a half a cup of Parmesan cheese here. And as you start to kind of beat that in, you'll see it changes texture to ultra creamy. So you always salt at the end with the risotto. We'll talk about why, but that Parmesan is really salty. Sometimes the stock can be a little salty depending on where you get it from or how you made it. And then in this case, the pesto can be kind of salty. And so you want to add salt at the end so you can adjust as necessary. But here we go. Store-bought or homemade pesto. And just kind of add that right over the top. And then you just start to kind of marble that through. The green color just kind of quickly transforms it into like just a different stratosphere. All right. Now this is the last step that I find is really important for a risotto, which is let it rest. Just for a minute. Just let it set. I like to put the top on it for this and just let it hang out. And while this is doing its thing, we're going to talk really quickly about burrata cheese. So burrata is like mozzarella, except inside burrata is ricotta. So when I cut this, you can see how oozy it is inside. So we thought it'd be really good to top this risotto with a little bit of burrata. So what I'm going to do is grab some of this pesto. I'm going to grab a piece of burrata just right in the middle. And then some of these herbs left over from the pesto, some mint, just the leaves. I'm going to put a little black pepper over the top of this just so when I eat it, I get a little bit of a bite. And then some olive oil. Starting in the burrata and just kind of around the plate. So let's dig in. So the way that I do this is I kind of like break the burrata and then kind of drag it through the rice. Kind of like that. And that's the way to do it. Is this legal to eat this on camera? I mean, literally, I don't think this is okay for you guys to be watching. I'm having a little moment right now. Holy... You can't bleep on homemade, so I'm not going to say it. I mean, the risotto, the rice, you barely have to chew. I mean, it just disintegrates on your tongue. You get so much brightness from the lemon and the herbs. Even those mushrooms, you don't see the mushrooms, you don't really like feel the mushrooms in your mouth, but they just add this like, whoa, this robustness of flavor that's so good. And then it just gets cut by this milky, creamy, unbelievable cheese. And it's just, I don't know, it's like a cascade in your mouth. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. This is like birthday day food. This is like the type of food you want on your birthday. Well, hopefully you guys got some risotto tips and tricks that you can really take home with you guys. I love this version, but again, I just don't want you to be stuck on this idea that you have to make pesto risotto. Anything. I've seen red pepper risotto. Heck, I've seen chocolate risotto. I'm not even kidding. Where they add a little bit of brown sugar. It's like rice pudding and a little bit of chocolate. No cheese, no onions, but you get the idea. So risotto, to me, is the chameleon of the kitchen. It can take on any flavor, any color, any texture you throw at it, and that is why we keep teaching it. That's why I'm the risotto whisperer, self-proclaimed, I will say. But hopefully you took a lot away from this, and we'll just keep busting out amazing risotto recipes for you. Anyways, so good to hang out with you guys in the kitchen. I'm going to keep gobbling up this risotto. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch you next week. See you soon. Happy cooking. Bye, guys. Hey there, I'm Joel Gamoran. I'm the head chef and founder of Homemade, and we launched Homemade with the idea that we want to bring cooking and the kitchen to the world. So if you love cooking and want to join us in one of our free live stream cooking classes, head to our website, homemadecooking.com. That's homemadecooking.com to register today.